Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Gayle Carson. Welcome to Living Regret Free, a program that shows you how to live a better and more joyful life. As an added bonus, I invite you to listen to an introduction to my Mindset Matters program, which ties into this so well. Go to www.sobmindset.com. It's free, and I know you will enjoy it. If you'd like to contact me personally, drop me a line at gaylecarson13@gmail.com or go to my website, www.spunkyoldbroad.com, and sign up for my weekly newsletter. You are really in for a treat today because I have someone who not only is a woman in business, but she is a kind of a mad woman in business. I mean, she has so many things she does. It's amazing that she can create what she does. But let me tell you a little bit about her. Her name is Denise Gosnell. She's a serial entrepreneur, a business strategist, a productivity hacker, an attorney, an author, and a real estate investor. And she owns three companies: a coaching training company, a law firm, and a real estate company. And through her company, The Vacation Effect Incorporated, she helps busy entrepreneurs learn how to use some unconventional scheduling and growth strategies to grow their business even faster by working up to 40% less. Now, here is what you guys need to listen to. The same strategies, those things that I just mentioned, allow her to work an average of only 3 days a week, running three companies in three different industries while having 2 business days a week for any creative or other pursuits she desires. So join me in welcoming Denise Gosnell. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on the show today.
Well, this really isn't a show about women in business, it's a show about living regret free. So everybody is going to be interested in how you do all those things, Denise. And I know you've had some physical and pivotal moments in your life that you showed that you weren't living your life in alignment with what really matters. So why don't you tell us about those pivots?
Yeah, so to start with, back 8 years ago, if we can roll back time, I was at that point, my main focus was as a patent lawyer, where I was making a lot of money, but I wasn't really happy with, what I was doing. It's like one of those things is just because you're making a lot of money doesn't mean you're doing something you love. And what happened was God actually gave me a really important wake up call, and it came in the form of a house fire. We were struck by lightning, and then there was a knock at my front door because we didn't know we were on fire. We were looking around trying to see if there was anything wrong. And so this fireman knocks on my front door, and then he asks me what turned out to be the most important question I've ever been asked in my life. And is it okay if I share that question?
Sure, of course.
All right. So what he said was, what do you want us to retrieve in the next 5 minutes before your house is destroyed by fire and water? And what was interesting to me wasn't just how I answered him, but how I didn't answer him. So there I was at that moment working 80 hours a week, and I was an unhappy millionaire. And I was working all that time to pay for a bunch of stuff that I didn't even care about when it was burning. And but how I did answer him, which was really revealing to me, was that I wanted him to retrieve my daughter's stuffed animal bunny. She was 5 at the time. We all know how important those stuffed animals are. They're like a member of the family, right? And I had them get my wedding photos from 25 years ago that I didn't have digital copies of. That was before we had digital cameras, and a blanket my grandmother made me. So what do all those people represent, or what do all those things represent? It's the people and memories in our life that matter, not the stuff.
That's so
So yeah,
true. That's so
yeah.
true. I mean, I don't know how many of our listeners would know what to answer when somebody said you've got 5 minutes to get what matters to you. They'd look and say, "What? I don't know what." So you retrieve for your daughter, you retrieve for your marriage, and you retrieve for your family, your grandmother. So interesting, very interesting. And then, of course, you went from being what we call a workaholic, which I think I am, and working a reduced schedule for 3 days a week. How did that happen?
Well, I'd love to tell you that I just learned everything I needed that day and it magically transformed, but that's not quite what happened. That day after my fire, I vowed, as I stood there from my neighbor's garage watching everything I had worked so hard for go up in flames, I just vowed that I was going to figure out how to be happy, but also how to provide a good life for my family without having to pick one over the other. Like, and it was no longer okay to do work I hated. It was no longer okay to be a workaholic and not spend time with my family. But I also wanted to reconcile the fact that there's nothing wrong with wanting to provide a good life for your family too, right? As long as it doesn't come at the cost of you never being there, which is what was happening to me. So that day I made the vow I was going to figure it out, even though I didn't have all the answers. So fast forward, I stumbled for 5 years. Literally, whenever I would, when I would work less, I would make less money, and then if I worked more, I wouldn't have any free time. And it's like this is not okay. So I actually went to the next breakthrough for me came when I went to a meditation retreat where we were supposed to lay out on the grass outside on this beautiful day in Boulder, Colorado, and ask a question of what have we always wanted, like ask our higher self or God to give us that insight. And so the question I went there with was, how can I have the schedule I've always dreamed of without sacrificing my income? And it was interesting, Gail, because the answer that I received was like God whispering it in my ear. It's like, what are you waiting for? All you have to do is decide and make today what you want tomorrow to be. So it's like interesting, isn't it? All you have to do is decide and make today.
Sounds full,
Yeah.
but not easy.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, well, great. How do I go from being a workaholic, although at that point I wasn't the workaholic entrepreneur anymore, but I still hadn't figured out how to like not have my income jeopardized in a big, big way. So I'm like, you know what? The schedule I've always wanted was the schedule that you described in the intro of the schedule that I have today. I always called it my Tuesday, Thursday schedule. I'd always dreamed of this Tuesday, Thursday schedule where I could wake up on those days and just say, what do I want to do today that makes me happy? And magically, I'm able to run my companies in the other three business days of the week. So, what I decided to do, following that nudge I got from God or my higher self or whoever was answering me that day, was I'm like, you know what? It wouldn't kill me to just do a 30-day experiment, even if it doesn't. What's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is I learn data from it that's valuable, and the best that can happen is it could change my life because I'm following guided, direction that I believe was coming from God. And so I literally did that. I blocked out the next 8 business day, or the next month, the next 30 days. I blocked off Tuesdays and Thursdays for 30 days, and I just started the little experiment. I gave myself permission to experiment, which is what I hope listeners are hearing here. We can give ourselves permission to experiment. We don't have to commit for the rest of our lives. Um, and is it okay if I share what happened?
Sure, of course.
Yeah. So what happened was it was painful at first. The first couple of weeks, it was stressful. You can imagine what would it be like if you just all of a sudden decided you're going to do this little experiment? What do you think would happen to you in the first couple of weeks? How would that feel?
Well, I think
Probably.
it's even interesting that you decided on a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, because I was thinking it would be like you would work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, have Thursday, Friday off, so you have a long weekend, or you would work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but you're not. You're doing a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule, which is unique in itself.
Yeah, and I just picked that because the nature of my 3 companies, one of those companies is a law firm, and the nature of the clients that I work with, it's like if I had picked the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then if they had sent me something really important on a Wednesday, I wouldn't be able to respond to them until the following Monday. So I didn't want to leave them in the lurch like that. So it was my personal preference to just say, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But other people listening to this, they could do whatever, made them happy. And even if they work for somebody else, we'll talk about how they could fit these ideas into their work schedule as well. But what happened though was it was painful at first because here I am trying to go from 40, 50 hours a week at that point. It was no longer 80, it was down to 40 or 50, but there I was trying to like fit it into 3 days. But what was interesting was I started noticing where I was wasting time. I started noticing where I was saying yes to things that I shouldn't be saying yes to. And that I also realized that it's like after I continued it for 3 and 4 weeks, I was getting better and better and better at it. And I noticed that it was like when you get ready to go on vacation. You know how when you get ready to go on vacation, you get like a month's worth of work done in the 2 days before you
True.
leave? Yeah, have you
So
experienced
true.
that? I think everybody's experienced that before. So I noticed, I'm like, wait a minute. This is like when you're about to go on vacation. And that's where my company name, The Vacation Effect, comes from. It's like, what if I could become that productive every single week because I'm forced to focus on what really matters by limiting the amount of time I'm willing to spend? And that's what exactly was happening. That because I was only giving myself 3 days to spend instead of 6 that I used to spend, I had to start saying no. I had to delegate. I had to organize my time better. I had to do things differently. And that differently is where the magic was, if that makes sense.
So how did you decide what to say no to? I mean, that's what I have a friend who says no is a complete sentence. But how do you decide what to say no to? Because that's difficult for a lot of people.
Yeah, it really is. And it depends also on whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you work for someone else. But I think the principles are the same. For me, I decided to say no to anything that didn't allow me to live in alignment with my life purpose. And I actually, have a whole life purpose framework that I teach. But like, so for me, I believe that my purpose in life is to be an amplifier, and my gifts are problem solving, simplifying the complicated, helping others and learning new things. And I summarize that in what I call a power word, which is, I'm an amplifier. It's one word that articulates the three things that I'm the best at. So if somebody's asking me to do something and it doesn't let me be an amplifier, those three things that I'm the best at and that I'm the happiest when I'm doing, then I have to decide, does the company even need to be doing this? I don't want to do it because it doesn't let me be an amplifier. Do I have someone on my team who it's their greatest gift and it lets them be what fulfill their life purpose and be what they're greatest at? If so, I can delegate it to them. And if not, the answer is no. So that does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And what I think is interesting is that you kind of went through something that most people go through and don't even think about. And in this day of college expenses, it's something to really think about. And is that you were trained as a lawyer, as a patent attorney, you were making tons of money and you weren't happy. And there are
Hmm.
so many people who train for a particular thing, do it and say, wow, I'm not having fun. This is not what I want to do. And so it's just really interesting. So, what do you think is the biggest lesson that you learned about how to live in the now and be happy today?
Yeah, so one of the greatest lessons I learned, in addition to, figuring out what my life purpose is, I used to think it was some nebulous thing that, you're destined to do this one thing. And I finally figured out that I truly believe that our purpose that God wants for us is that we be happy. And the way that we're happy is when we do the things we enjoy as much as humanly possible. So that was the first part of it, was identify, like coming to terms with the fact that I thought that was what my life purpose is, and owning that and being happy with that. And if people are listening don't agree with that, great, but find a definition of life purpose that resonates with you, whatever that may be. If you like mine, adopt it and use it as your own. If not, pick your own, but don't settle for a definition you're not happy with, because it'll just give you a much happier life. But the other part to that was what I call bringing the someday maybes into the now. And so what do I mean by a someday maybe? We've all told ourselves, someday when I have more time, I'll do the thing, I'll travel more, I'll spend more time with family, whatever. Someday when I have more money, I'll go to that, fancy restaurant or whatever the case is. I call those the someday maybes. All a someday maybe is delayed, something you're delaying yourself joy now. So I recommend people bring them into the now in whatever way you can afford or whatever way you can, or you give yourself permission to let them go and say, you know what, I'm kidding myself, I'm never going to do that. If it means enough to you to tell yourself you're going to do it because it's that important to you, find a version of it you can do today. Even if it's not the fancy trip around the world that you've always wanted to take a virtual tour of those places from the comfort of your own home, or take a weekend getaway in your local community to the neighboring city. Like, there's always a version of that you can do today. Those were the two big things.
And that's interesting because sometimes, what your someday maybe is, and you wait and you wait and you wait, and when you get there, it's far less than what you thought it was going to be. So,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
important to enjoy it when you're first thinking about it. But so what does freedom mean to you, Denise? I mean, uh, can everyone really claim the freedom they deserve?
I believe you absolutely can. Here's my favorite quote that I have come up with on my own, and I've heard different versions of this at a lot of different places, and I pieced together this version myself. Freedom is a mindset, not a destination. Freedom is a decision you make. It's a state of mind, not a place you get to someday when you have more time or when you have more money or when you retire. So everyone can choose to have freedom. Unless you're in prison or in the military, you are in complete control of what you do and how you spend your time each day, right? Those are the two exceptions to that, where you have somebody else telling you where you have to go and what you have to do. So, the average person has freedom in first world countries, of course. I mean, I know there are countries in the world where it's arguable about whether those people really have freedom or not. But, for the most part, most of the world can make the decision to have freedom. And so what do I mean by deciding to have freedom? It's about deciding that you're going to plan your business or your job around your life and not the other way around. And I'll give you an example of how you can do that when you work for someone else versus when you're an entrepreneur, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah. So if you work for someone else, like when I used to be a software developer before I went into law and entrepreneurship, I actually negotiated. I was a really valuable employee. So that's the first step is you got to be valuable if you're working for someone else. When you're valuable, you can write your own ticket. When you're good at what you do, you can focus on the value you bring and negotiate better deals with your employer. So I started off with being a really valuable employee. I negotiated a reduced schedule 23 years ago, where I basically worked 4 days a week for a software company. And that was it's a billion dollar software company that I negotiated that with. And I basically made myself really valuable and just said, hey, I'd really like to do X, Y, and Z, and I'd like to do it 4 days a week. And here's what you're going to get in return. And let's try it as an experiment. And if I don't produce, you have the right to say no and take it away from me. But if I do and I produce, I get to maintain it permanently. So see right there, I was like the beginning of my whole experimenting idea. I gave my employer an experiment to say yes to, and they couldn't turn me down because it was a win-win for both of us. And
And
then,
the most
yeah, go
important
ahead.
thing, though, was you were valuable. And a lot of people, are doing everyday jobs and they just do their job. They don't bring anything extra to their job. And that makes a big difference as well. So that's an important lesson right there. So
Yes.
when you talk about something about a principle of forced hyper efficiency. What is that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Gail. So that's one of those where, like, back to the vacation analogy that we were talking about earlier. So forced hyperefficiency is an example of when I'm only allowing myself to work 3 days in the company instead of five, for example. I'm forcing myself to be really efficient with how I'm spending my time because of the circumstances I'm putting myself in. It's like when you're about to go on vacation, you're forcing yourself to get stuff done because you know you're not going to be available. It's like if the room is lit on fire right now that you're in, you're going to be highly motivated to find a way to get out of that room because the circumstances are dictating that to you. So, like, of course, that's a dramatic example, but day in and day out, forced hyper efficiency just means limiting the amount of time that you're willing to spend on a project or on your work so that you're forced to focus on what really matters and get them done efficiently.
Well, according to time management principles, though, work expands to fit the time slot you give it. So if you put it into a particular time frame, like you were doing, that's what the work gets done in that amount of time. So you actually are practicing a really important time management principle. But how could we all become more efficient in how we spend our time? Because I was on a call this morning where everybody was talking about what it's like now to be working from home. And a lot of them are having trouble managing their time because they're used to working in an office environment with lots of people around them, which actually is not as efficient as they think it is. But so
Yeah.
how do you tell people to be more efficient in how they spend their time?
Yeah, so there are a number of different strategies that I use. I'll share my favorite one with you, which is I use a digital timer, not my phone timer, because that gets distracting if you notice somebody's text message or something coming across. But I just use a digital timer, a battery operated one where you can punch in the numbers and hit start. And so, for example, let's say the task is something I estimate to take an hour. So, what I'll do, this is like a trick on the brain, I'll set the timer for 30 minutes. And then I know that I'm probably not going to be done at 30 minutes, but I'm like forcing myself to concentrate because I see that timer ticking down. So what happens, Gail, is at 30 minutes, I look over and the buzzer goes off. I don't give myself another 30 to finish it. I give myself 10, for example. And so what ends up happening is most of the time I'm done at the 40-minute mark. And what did I just do there? I literally just created time out of thin air. I took a project that was supposed to take an hour, and it would have taken me an hour had I not had a timer going and had I not given myself that urgency. But I took it and I got it done just as well, if not better, in 40 minutes. And it happens over and over again. So, same example can apply if it's a 15-minute task. I'll set the timer for 7 or 8 minutes. But does that make sense? It's like we're like
It
tricking our
does, but
brain
it
into
takes a
focusing.
lot of discipline.
It
It takes a
does.
lot of discipline, Denise, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
I kind of think you talked about, what freedom means to you and how everyone can claim that freedom if they're willing to do it, and do the work that's necessary for it. But you also have a unique perspective, I think, on life purpose and a simple framework to help people find their purpose. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I alluded to it this at a high level a minute ago, but of course there's more to what I had than what I had said a minute ago, and that was I believe that your purpose in life is to be happy, to live in joy as much as possible. And the way that you can do that is to start with identifying the top 3 things that you are the happiest when you're doing, that you do them, your whole life, whether anybody pays you or not. And notice that it's independent of any business. Like I have 3 companies, but I get to be an amplifier in all 3 of those companies. Like I mentioned a minute ago, that was my quote power word. Well, so once you figure out what your unique and joyful talents are that you love doing, whether anybody would pay you or not, you then can come up with the power word that I mentioned, where it's like, okay, what one word best summarizes those 3 things? Not that you can't, end up coming up with a draft. You can come up with a draft word in the meantime if you don't find the perfect word. It took me a while to find my perfect word, but an amplifier is the word that best summarizes my three talents because it's a piece of equipment that takes in a bunch of noise, like problems, problem solving, and information, learning new things, and it outputs something beautiful, which is helping others. So see how that word kind of summarizes the 3 things that I said are my unique talents. So,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah. So,
Uh,
for you, it could be, illuminator. You illuminate people. I'm just making up words for you from the things I've seen you do. So that's an example of activator, catalyst, illuminator, visionary. There are a lot of interesting words people might come up with. But once you have the 3 unique talents and you give it a name, you can use that in as a frame of reference in any business or job you ever do. Because you can ask yourself, does this let me be an amplifier? Does this let me be an illuminator? Does this let me put those gifts to to use in the world?
wow. Wow. That's great. That's fantastic.
Thank
Well,
you.
we have about 4 minutes left, so I want to make sure we get in everything we're supposed to. Hope everybody's not hearing all those noises. People, they're working on my building where I am, and they're working on the outside. So forgive us if you hear any tap, tap, taps, but that's kind of what's going on here, and you got to live with it because that's where we are now. We are all homebound. So let me ask you, what are some other things? Let's first of all find out where they can find you. And I know that you have a copy of your book summary that you want to offer as a gift. So tell us about where they can find that, where they can find you, and if they want to talk to you further about services that you offer, because I know that you also you help your clients improve lives and have more freedom, and that's something you work on with them. So what are some of the ways people can reach you?
Yeah, so the best way is through the Vacation Effect website, which is Vacation Effect with an E, so vacationeffect.com. And on that site, they can find my podcast, which I hope to interview you on in the future, by the way, as
Oh,
well as, yeah, as well as my book summary and details about this is actually a pre-release copy of my book summary. My book will be coming out later in 2020. So, and then I've got some other free resources, blogs and podcasts and things there as well. So that would be the best place for them to connect with me. It has all the other
wonderful.
links
So,
there too.
folks, it's vacationeffect.com. Vacation, you know how to spell that, and effect, EFFECT.com. So, what else have we not talked about, Denise, that you would like to mention to our listeners?
Probably that always be looking for ways to grow by subtraction. That's one of my favorite mantras is how to grow by subtraction, how to do more with less. If you look for it, there's always a way to do more with less. And when you face obstacles in your life, look at how can I make this the best thing that ever happened to me? Like what happened to me with my house fire. I kept looking, how can I make this the greatest thing that ever happened to me? And guess what? I found it.
I can tell you there's not a whole lot of people that could look at it like that. But I have to also tell you that when I listen to the stories from tornadoes or hurricanes or fires or whatever happens to be, I'm absolutely amazed at the resiliency of the people that are in this country. It's amazing. It's just amazing.
Yes, it
So,
is.
um, but gosh, Denise, it has been wonderful. And for those of you who don't know, I have. I've met Denise in person. She's a wonderful, perfect human being. Oh, you can hear all that rattle in the background. Sorry about that, folks, but it's just what's going on in the world right now. And I want to thank you, Denise, because you're offering something that's so needed right now, where people can get some of that time back that they want to spend with their families because they are at home and they're able to go ahead and get all of that done. So Thank you so much for being with us, and hopefully everybody will get benefits from this. And go to her website, vacationeffects.com, get a summary of her book, and take a look at what she's doing, because she's one fantastic prioritizer and she is an amplifier. Thanks so much for being with us, Denise.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor to be with you.
You've had the opportunity to get to know me over the last few years, and I'd like to get to know you as well. One of the things I'm offering is training for the media. I have a wonderful program that will get you ready for any radio or TV interview you might be offered. Many of you are doing wonderful things, but no one knows about them. Others of you are successful and wonder, what's next? Whether you're in a business or have a special cause or a specific event you're promoting, media can help. And I can help you master your message so you can master the media. If this sounds interesting to you, email me at gailcarson13@gmail.com with media training in the subject line. I promise I will be in touch. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's show. I choose my guests carefully, so if you have someone you'd like me to interview, please drop me a line at gailcarson13@gmail.com. In the meantime, check out my intro program, Mindset Matters, at www.sobmindset.com. See you next week.